And it's getting so you can't pretend. Your tears keep giving you away. But you're praying for a better day.
Great start.
Prince George's County, DMV. It's Wednesday, 7 o'clock, 7 p.m., and we're coming to you live from the official county barbershop where things are uncut. With me tonight is our co-host. We have some technical issues. And Nadir, he's there, but sometimes he dozes off. Nadir, you with us?
Yes, Nadir Nasheed.
So DMV, Prince George's County, is always good to be talking with and to you all. Tonight, as usual, we got a great deal to talk about. We first want to congratulate our new county executive-elect, Aisha Boy. She was extremely triumphant last night in her run for county executive. She did extremely well. We got some feedback and discussion from our engineer. Let's try to get through this. The election, what does it mean? What does the new county executive have to deal with? We are in, I think, unprecedented times. We've got 70,000 unemployed people in Prince George's County due to the federal government issue. We've got the boycott situation that seems to be effective. But this means a lot of different things. What happens to the county's tax base? If you have 70,000 people and 50,000 of them are homeowners, what happens to those people who can't pay property taxes, can't pay mortgages? What happens to some of these children who are in school that the parents have to take out of school because they have lost their jobs through this madness from Pennsylvania Avenue? And it is not only happening, of course, to Prince George's County or the state of Maryland. I looked at the meeting, I'll call it, on Capitol Hill. I won't call it a State of the Union address, but I was surprised to see any Democrats there, because the truth is, I don't think they should have attended. I take my hat off to Congressman Al Green, who stood up, said his piece, and they escorted him out. Now, I'm mindful of when Marjorie Greene and the other congressmen, one called Barack Obama a liar, the other one, Marjorie Greene, stood up and said all kind of madness, and they didn't do anything to them. But this is indicative of the time that we are in. This is a bad time. You know, I've asked Gene, who is the financial person, that person who knows what a dollar is and cannot do. We have to try to figure out what to anticipate. People are losing jobs, and because they're losing jobs, others are going to lose jobs. I talked about Uber Eats. Uber Eats may very well go out of business because nobody's going to be ordering food. They can't afford it. Rideshare. Nobody's got no place to rideshare too. Metro is going to take a hit. Nobody's going to be on the train. So when this happens, what is the obvious? People begin to cut staffing. For our new county executive, I know she's a smart individual, but I would say to everybody, it is hard to get something when you don't have nothing. You can't get something out of nothing. For Mary Bowser, the Congressional Congress, the Republicans are forcing her to paint over the Black Lives Matter Boulevard and change the name to Liberty Boulevard. What liberty? Where's the liberty at? Muriel Bowser stood strong on Black Lives Matter Boulevard, and it went national. The city made a statement. But now, because the Republicans are trying to take the city away from the controls it has, I think Muriel Bowser is having to bend over. The question becomes this: how much more are people going to be able to take these tariffs? Don't think that these tariffs are not going to hurt you. They are, but I'm going to tell you who they're going to hurt the most. It's going to hurt the farmers. These farmers are going to say they can't lose 1 month, 2 months, or one season of producing their food, their farm things. They can't. They'll go under. But these tariffs, especially the tariffs coming from China, 20%, that's a lot of money if you're talking about buying a television. Everything, probably every other thing you got in your house is stamped with made in China. Auto shops, repair shops, they're not going to be able to make repairs. They can't do these things. They're going to lay people off. So in short, it's not just the government workers who are being put out of work. This thing will snowball, get out of control, and I will tell you what it reminds me of. It reminds me of the Depression of 1929. The Depression was because people did not have jobs. There was no money. It wasn't about just what we call disposable income. There was no needed income. They just lost everything they had. And even the Republicans, we try to listen to them, they put a lot of emphasis on small businesses. Small businesses are going to be the first to go under. They're already struggling. So tonight, we're going to be asking Gene to give us more on that for Nadia. Nadia, they are in the process of building 30 new contract detention facilities. Now they're saying these are for the immigrants that they're going to be taken into custody. But listen, let's not be fooled, okay? Contract prisoners make a lot of money for a lot of these small towns. So where you have some towns that are going to be struggling because they've been put out of work, others are going to be thriving because he's going to build prisons. Well, when you build a prison, the prison's just a brick, a cinder block edifice if there's nobody in there. So he's got to put people in prison. That tells you a story in itself. Somebody's got to go to jail. And it's not just the immigrants. Don't be fooled. We got big problems here. But again, let's be thankful for our newly elected county executive. But I got a bad feeling she's going to have to clean up the mess of the last two administrations, and it's not going to be an easy thing to do. She just does not have a lot to work with. She doesn't. I need to do this housekeeping, Gene, and I did before I give it over to you all. We're still in a time, and probably more so, when we have to be concerned about auto theft. So the Vehicle Theft Prevention Council, they're still being mindful. Don't become a victim. You know, I looked at a story the other day when a lady went to the post office and she got out to run inside to drop off a letter. When she came out, her purse was gone. I'm sorry that happened to you, lady, but why would you do that? Criminals are there in those places looking for people to do just that. They know it's a start. I don't know just what happened there, Steve. But look, I'm going to turn this back over to Nadia. We're going to continue to give away the air tags, and remember, there's the apparatuses you can buy to prevent people from stealing your high-end vehicles. Nadia, I got to give it to you. I've got too much distortion on my side.
Good evening, good people. So, just to piggyback off of the DEI disturbance, that's what I'm gonna call it. and how it's going to trickle down to our youth if their parents just happen to get caught up in it and lose their jobs. And Gene can tie into this. We're talking about financial instability, which often means loss of income or an inconsistent flow. That means the children are facing disruptions into in their needs, in their resources, their parents. It also will affect their emotional and mental stability. And in children, it could come out in many ways. I don't feel like going to school today because I'm wearing the same thing that I wore 2 weeks ago, which in my age era, if you ain't wear to school twice a month, then you wasn't going to school with clothes on because it just wasn't like that. But shifts in educational opportunities. We know that if there's a loss of income, there's the potential of losing your house, your mortgage or your rent can't be paid. So you might have to move to another neighborhood. You might have to move in with another family member or something like that. And these are some of the things that we're going to start seeing based on what's really occurring right now. That would be also considered a family change in the dynamics. Impacts of careers and aspirations because the morale is low. We now will go from thinking about aspirations, and now we're thinking about survival. And young kids, in my opinion, aren't built for that. That's the role of the parents. They shouldn't have to worry about how they're gonna eat or where their next pair of shoes gonna come from, because they should be able to focus on education without being concerned of those things. One of the major things that have happened outside of the inconsistency of income is them potentially losing their health care because then their parents are no longer employed. And a lot of kids are dealing with a lot of things. A lot of kids are on medications along with the adults. And we all know the medicines, the prescriptions, they aren't cheap. Like, I personally don't utilize any medications at all. So I can't relate to the cost from a personal standpoint, but my parents do. And I've heard many, many stories of, making a choice between your meds because of the cost. So this list can go on and on. The community and social standing, because if you're uprooted from your current community where you feel safe and you have to go somewhere else that's not so safe or doesn't feel neutral or what you're used to, then we're talking about another adjustment that you have to make. And when we're talking about kids, again, they need to focus on what they need to focus on and allow the adults to take care of them. But if the DEI is affecting the employment and the incomes, then it's going to be hard for them to do that, Chief. And what I was talking to a gentleman today, and we both agreed on the fact that you even want to have some of these parents that have these good government jobs be forced with making some decisions that they never thought they would have to make. And I'm not wishing any bad on nobody, but some of these people are going to commit some crimes just to be able to take care of their family. And that's just, human nature.
But it's true, self-preservation is the way of mankind. And no parent is going to just watch their child go hungry, homeless, or otherwise. My issue, Gene, is when our politicians are talking about, we heard it from Councilwoman Koala, And I commend her talking about looking for jobs and trying to help these people find jobs. But as Nadir just made clear, the fallout is going to be immediate. These parents won't be able to hold back that gale wind, hoping that they're going to get a job. Gene, what's going to happen? Again, we talk about juvenile problems. We've seen this years ago when juveniles go out and commit crimes trying to help support their mother who lost her job.
Absolutely.
So it is more than the parent going to a workshop or going to a job fair. What's going to happen in the interim is what we need to try to get ahead of. You know, Gene, you made a very good, valid point that when things get tough, Black people tend to rise above it and do what we need to do. But again, it's hard to get something from nothing. Gene, what happens financially when things begin to fall apart, as they very well may? Now, I'm not telling anybody I looked into a football or I'm just telling you the writing is clearly on the wall. This person on Pennsylvania Avenue, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, intends to bring people down to their knees because that's what he wants. He wants people to bow to him, and he's going to keep turning these screws and try to make that happen. Gene, what happens financially? How can people withstand this pressure and this fallout? I think Gene Nadir has lost his volume, his audio
Yeah,
again.
Gene having some technical difficulties over there, people. So give us some time for him to come back in.
So Nadir, for you, courts don't have any compassion. Well, the judge can say, I'm sorry you had to go through it. I'm sorry you felt you had to rob people to help your mother pay the bill. But Nadir, when we talked last week about people ending up in jail and something was not their fault, is that what we're getting ready to go up against? A lot of people going to prison because they were forced into this situation?
You know, as much as we may not want to see it, Chief, is definitely a strong possibility because the level of the playing field is not in favor of the common working people. We seeing it play out in front of us every day, and it doesn't appear that the people that's supposed to represent the American people can stop what's happening.
Are we so blind and have we been asleep so long? I often use that metaphor of Rip Van Winkle, who sat down beside the oak tree and went to sleep. Are we still this sleeping? You know, everybody, and people are not listening. And, you know, Republicans, they don't want to hear about woke. They are now trying to let you know you ain't woke at all because we can do this, that, and other things to you. We're not. Where is the fight, Nadir? You know, I tell parents all the time, you need to fight for your child before they get into trouble. Where's the fight at, Nadir?
I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago when we addressed the fact that when we try to live with the other people, the vanilla people. We try to engage with them and be a part of their society. And when we did that, I personally believe, even though I wasn't old enough for that transition, I believe that that's when we gave up our strength. That's when we gave up our power. And we started to fall asleep. We started to believe that we made it, that we had arrived. And so I can think back to when I was younger, and most businesses was it wasn't necessarily a reflection of me, but there was more people that was running the businesses that I could relate to. And now it's not like that. It's not even the people who originally had the businesses. It's like other ethnicities came into our country and took over all of the businesses that either we was forced to lose or we just couldn't afford to purchase anymore. And when the government came into play and all of our people started getting these government jobs, I believe, Chief, it's my personal opinion, they thought they arrived, they got lax, because you could work the government job for 40, 50 plus years and continue to live your life. But was you really building something outside of that?
Yeah. Well, this goes back to what Malcolm X tried to get across to people. Don't think that you can be and play the same game that white man's playing. You're not him. You don't know how to do it. Nadia, you are actually right. You see, with some of our Black businesses, and I do remember, some of them had very viable, good businesses. But when somebody came along and offered them a chunk of money, they sold out because they thought that money would help them to arrive. But my philosophy I've always used then, or the metaphor rather, was you lived in DC, you took that money and you went south on 95 thinking you were going to New York. You got it wrong from day one. But now, we have a new generation, this younger generation that's problematic, because you got a lot of those coming out of college that had trouble finding a job. They got what used to be known as the good government job. Some of these young people just having their first child, their first mortgage, and they're out of a job. They're out. They're simply ass out on the street.
And how many years has that happened?
Would you say, Jane, that we can hear
and how many years of that has been going on? Like 30 years.
Well, but Gene, I'm glad you're back, because to the audience, Gene has talked to Nadia and I don't think he talked to anybody else, about the system that we try to think is for us, part of us, or we're part of it. And Gene, this is a clear-cut response to what you've said. We ain't no part of this system. We're not. Now, you got some white folks on television, they hollering and hooping, I voted for him, and I lost my job. Well, they look at that as collateral damage. This system was never for us.
But think about it like this, Chief. If you went to the store to go buy a suit and it doesn't fit you, or you look at a menu and or some kind of suit in a magazine, and you want to know if it fits you or not, what they're showing you is what fits an average white male. Whatever his standard is, that is the standard, right? And it's across the board with everything. So if you don't get the same education he gets, if you don't live in the same type of neighborhood he lives in, then you fall below the standard and you're not wanted, right? It don't matter if you're black, white, it doesn't matter.
Gene, let me ask you.
That's the bar.
Bring up an important point here, because what Nadir was saying, and I think it's kind of counter to some of what you're saying, a lot of us went out and brought that suit and put it on, thought we looked good in it, and we moved into those neighborhoods where it gave us the impression we had arrived. But the truth was this: it was all a facade. It was almost like you thought you looked well in that suit, but you really don't. Right. Through your eyes, you look well in it. And your house ain't like their house, because their house, they got a $500 a month mortgage. You got a $1,500 a month mortgage. So right. You're not as comfortable in your house as they are in there. But Gene, when do we get an understanding that, and Malcolm tried his best to tell us, Gene, what you were saying, this system was not designed for you. In fact, this system evolved into a trickery. It now tricks us.
It's always been a trick. It's never stopped. If I let all my slaves go, you think I'm gonna let them have equal rights? I'm gonna start writing rule of law and governance that restrict them and how they move. So then you bring the police department in to make sure that they do stay like that. You see what I'm saying? So now we fast forward to now. All we have is a bunch of laws and regulations that have been placed since 1865. And that's the Reconstruction period. Reconstructing how we're going to move without slaves. How are we going to have commerce? How are we going to, what is going to be important? And they told white people how to move in it. They didn't tell us.
Mm.
Right? So then we got to figure out how to read. We got to figure out how to speak English, and we got to figure out how to talk to white people. And then we got to figure out how to stick together, because you got somebody who might be a house nigga, and he's gonna tell on somebody who's actually been putting 80 hours in the sun. Right? So imagine 20, 100 years, 200 years have gone by, and you're passing the same information. We still eat the same foods the slaves ate today.
Mm.
Pig feet, chitlins, that was the scraps. We still eat it. Majority of us do, right? Because it's passed down. The knowledge is the same thing. The DNA is the same thing. Everything's the same thing. That's 500 years of the same information. Now, once they feel like they gave you us rights, civil rights, like Nadir said, we got relaxed. We thought we was on the inside. Then it said segregation. Well, we're gonna get rid of segregation, desegregation, and started busting us around the whole county. And then we figured out, oh, well, we must be good now. We can go to white schools now. And black people dropped their businesses because they were being accepted. But then once they got accepted, they put restrictions in. That's why they gave it to us. And then soon after that, drugs was on the street.
So
they was
real quick. They have shown us in every movement that you are not us.
Exactly.
Just think about it. Just think about all of the people that move to certain areas in PG County, because in PG County, Prince George's County, black people didn't live everywhere. So now you get your good government job and you want to move out Kettering. You want to move out Largo. What do white people do? Move down Upper Marlboro. You want to move down Upper Marlboro. What they do? They go to Charles County. They always going where they don't want you to be around them.
Right. Looking for acceptance.
Always come to their establishments.
Well, that
same way with the other ethnicities. We go into Chinese restaurants. They don't live in our communities. They be living in communities where the houses cost $750,000. Like, nobody really accept us. Not even us, the ones that make it. We don't even accept us.
That is the key phrase. That's the 800-pound gorilla. We don't even accept us. Because Gene goes to what Gene is saying, we were taught not to accept us. We took that on. And again, this is what Malcolm tried to tell us. This is what Carver tried to tell us. They educated you and they taught you how to be victim, how to be lower than. That's what they taught you in our schools. Nadir, I'm hearing it more, and Gene, this is something we heard 100 years ago, that the worst thing that maybe could have happened was desegregation. Give this some thought. Give this some thought. We've talked a lot about Black Wall Street. In fact, what did Black Wall Street indicate? What did it really indicate? It showed Black people taking care of Black people. Now, I've got to put a comment on this table. That's really kind of frightening. You have a different kind of Black person, I will agree with you, that's still being forced to live in this system, but they maybe are not the best educated, but they're surely more educated. I don't think that they're going to put up with this. I just don't. And I base this on historical facts, if you will. Even as undereducated or lower educated as those who came before us were in the 1950s and 1960s, it came to a point where they said, we just simply not going to take this anymore. We may not be educated enough to understand it, but morally, we know it is wrong. The way you are teaching us is wrong. My question is this: will there come a time before long when Black folks say, we ain't going to take this off of y'all folks? We ain't going to do it.
But Chief,
what happens?
It's bigger than that. It's just that we don't know what's going on. See what I'm saying? If we just analyze the system that we live in, then we might be able to figure it out. It's bits and pieces, it's fragmented, right? So if you see that white people aren't happy and they're crying over the economy, there's a problem. See what I'm saying? If you see just Black people, then it's not a problem. But when you see white people crying over the economy, there's a problem. And we don't know what it is because we don't know anything about money or history of money.
Well, that and that's why I hope that our audience understands why we do this podcast, or one of the reasons we do this podcast. And I am really pleased to see more podcasts going, because we don't know things because we don't have any way, or we don't give the attention we need to know what's going on outside of our door. See, listen, I can't blame folks for things that we should be responsible for. I can't. You know, I can tell you that the things that they're trying to teach your children in school are not the things your children should be learning. But if you know that and you don't do anything to change it, you're your children's problem. If you don't listen to podcasts like this and get an idea or knowledge of what's going on around you, what do you think is going to happen? You are in the blind. You might as well be sitting down beside that oak tree, sleep. How do we wake up? Gene, how do you even come about creating a Black Wall Street when people are sleeping? They don't know what you're talking about because, Gene, they don't listen to anything that goes on outside the door. Look, let me throw a brick or two. And I'm not talking about all of. Let me say that straight up. But
can't never say all.
What? I've had. Go ahead, Gene.
I apologize. I said you just can't say all, like you said.
Right. We can have a you know, my grandson plays basketball for county schools. You can go to those basketball games and you can't even find a place to sit down. Everybody's there. But I can have a program for a youth group and don't nobody show up but the mothers and the grandmothers. We have to call it like we see it. And I would say to all of us, if this thing keeps going in the direction it's going in, you're going to be called to task. And you need to listen to what Nadia is saying, because if they lock you up, you can't fight back. You can't. You can't do it. And I'm not just talking about physically fighting back, but mentally, it's just a brain wave that's shut down. But how do we get you all people to listen to what's going on, to tune in where people are talking about what's happening to you? You listen to what that white man is saying. You turn that news on and you listen to everything that he puts out there. Now, lately, they've started to fire Black newscasters because too much of the truth was being brought out. There was too many insinuations being put in place, so they fired those people. Gene, Nadia, what does it take? What is it going to take to wake our people up? Is it going to take another 1865? When people say enough is enough, and so we're going to have to just fight this thing out? I sure as hell hope not. I hope not. But America seems to only knows one thing. America seems to only know violence, because that's part of that system, Gene, that you talk about. We see that as far back as the Pilgrims, the Indians, and everybody else that came across them. When those people say, y'all not going to treat us this way, what did they do? They killed them.
Yeah, people don't believe that they're in a slave system.
No, they don't. They think because they don't have chains on their ankles that they're free. You're not free. Mentally, you're locked up.
Chief, I honestly have to say that when we talk about change, we got to equate it to a revolution. And in revolutions, people do die.
It's unfortunate.
So it's going to have to be some casualties in order to get where you're talking about going.
Right.
It's sad, but it's going to have to happen that way. And if you got a lot of people fearing that risk, then we're not never going to get that change.
Right.
Well, my concern is
they'll be the casualties.
My concern is we have entered into a civil war. I see this as the first steps. You might as well have heard that first shot in Sumter, South Carolina. This is now that verbal war that has started, that war on paper. If it does not change, I think we are headed for a civil war. A lot of those I've talked to who are older than I am, they talk about the prerequisites to the 60s and the turmoil. They talk about the things that they saw happening, that they see happening today. And it reached a point, a boiling point, where people said, I'm not going to take it anymore. But Nadir, Gene, there are unfortunately, some significant differences. People talked about, white folks, they talked about the guns, oh, there's too many guns out there. Well, there's a whole lot of guns out there. A whole lot of them. So when I ask the question, what will the other side of such civil war or revolution, what the hell is it going to look like, Nadir? There will be casualties, but I don't think they're going to be one-sided.
Yeah, I don't think so either, because at this point, there, like you said, it's a lot of guns out there. It's a lot of people who can put their hands on guns that wouldn't otherwise have been able to do it, 20, 30 years ago. And they're not afraid to use them.
That's right. And Nadir, let me interject this. And I compare this to the Vietnam War. The Vietnamese people, the Viet Cong, as we wanted to call them, they were a desperate, determined people who fought for what was theirs. And as mighty as the U.S. and other allies may have been, they could not win that war. And so my concern is this. With all we talked about before, the losing of jobs, the losing of homes, the losing of healthcare, the losing of those things can make people a very, very angry people. You will have that good sister who goes to church every Sunday, standing out front of her house, daring the marshals to come in there and try to take her out of there. And she'd rather die than let that happen. If we magnify that by hundreds of thousands, Gene, what happens the next? And I believe this now. I think when this weather breaks, you ain't seen protests yet. But this fool we got on Pennsylvania Avenue, if he tries to use violence against these people, that will be the spark that this powder keg has been waiting for. Again, what the hell is it going to look like on the other side? Gene, that system you talked about.
So Chief, these systems, these economic systems, they've crashed before. This is not the last. This is the last one, but this is not the first one. But this is going to be the worst one because everything's tied to the dollar, right? So that system, you can tell it's falling apart because when inflation happens, because they keep printing money. Hyperinflation happens because people can't buy. And then when a larger percentage of people who can't buy, then that's when the system has to crash because nobody can buy. Well, I can't afford to pay $25 for some eggs. Well, what happens when that eggs get $100 or $150, right? Just for 6 eggs or 12 eggs. that's nobody's going to want to buy it. So that means that because that supply and demand is not happening, then the system has to crash. And what happened? The ball and chain is people start to lose their jobs. People start to rummage in the street, purge, and then when the system crashes, that means everything has to shut down. We have to get a new economy. But guess what? They're not going to crash a new economy. I mean, they're not going to crash the economy if they ain't got a new economy to go to.
Well, and Gene, and so I think again, so when we talk about people listening, learning, and being educated and understanding that this system you constantly allude to is not open to them to listen to. That's not what they're going to teach them school.
Facts. They're not going to teach. No.
But what I do think, Gene, is that some of those older ones who inherited this system, I think to some degree they have underestimated the other people. When I look at that border situation, I think helps me to make my point. There are more people coming across that border, and they don't give a damn how many border agents are on the other side. See, it's desperation. It is desperation, and that desperation is, and listen to what you said, and there's truth to it. If this system crashes, they already have another one in place. But the problem is you can't give people honey and then take it away from them. So whatever y'all think y'all may have in place, when this one falls, I don't think it's going to work out the way that you wanted it to, because people have had a taste of honey. You're not going to take somebody who lived in a $500,000 house and tell them they got to move their family of 5 back into a 1-bedroom on the side of the wall. That ain't going to happen.
Right, but guess when slavery ended, that was one system crashing, and then you had to reconstruct that, and then now we don't have slavery anymore. Yesterday it was slavery. Today it's not. But we got to rate the laws and everything to
modern day slavery.
Right. So now this modern day slavery is crashing, and we got to now it's going to crash. We have to rewrite that, and it's not going to look like the old system. Now we are in the middle of it, so we don't know why, because the media is not going to tell us. Because guess what? Like you said, this feels like the Great Depression, and I'm gonna say it's worse than the Great Depression because everything's tied to the dollar, and the world was connected to the dollar.
And Gene, and so this thought is extremely true. You know, this is a capitalistic country that we live in. It is about that almighty dollar. And,
right.
And Gene, something else you talked about before. Is there enough gold to cover this paper money that's out here? And if these white folks know there is not, then what do? They take away your dollar from you. This is what we have to understand that is happening. Your dollar is only worth 25 or 30 cents.
No, less than that.
That helps them to balance their gold budget. But again, my point is this: I can't get past this. How do you get people to listen? See, and we have been so sorely indoctrinated. I guarantee you that 7 out of 10 people would not even want to hear this discussion. They don't even want to hear it.
But you know what, Chief? They're not going to be, you can't get around it. It's going to happen. It's going to happen whether they want to hear it or not. So what it's going to do is it's going to force people to change. It's going to force them to look for avenues to address this. It's going to force discipline, and just maybe people will understand that rather than going out buying red bottoms and Cadillac trucks and all of that type of stuff, let's now start to put some money back in our own community so we can support our own mechanisms.
Right.
People are going to have to lose, Chief, in order to win.
Do you think it's too late?
Yes, you can't stop it.
Is it too late for us?
I mean, it's too late. It's too late.
It's too late for us to make changes?
Too late. No. Change is going to happen because guess what? Either it's voluntary or it's involuntary. Our change is going to be involuntary, just like it was involuntary with slavery.
That's exactly right. And that is my point. America only understands forced change. And I guess that goes back to my question. Nadir, you're absolutely right. Everybody's right here. The problem is we can't get enough people to listen to what we are saying. It's going to happen. Nadir, you're absolutely right. It's going to happen whether you're ready for it or not. The question is, do you know what to do when it does happen? Or are you going to stick your head in the sand and try to follow their system, Gene, as you have alluded to, believe it ain't going to happen to me. They ain't going to do this to me.
But guess what, Chief? The $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 worth of credit debt that you have to think about it differently. You're going to have to walk away from it because you think you have to pay it and the system is crashing, right? You think that the checks you got coming, the check you got coming in, that you can go spend it. You can't do that anymore. If you have a skill, you may need to barter, right? Think like all the way to the point where there's nothing. There's no electricity. Think to that point where you got food on the shelf that you'll be able to eat for some days or whatever, because a system is crashing. You may not have what you thought you had yesterday, and you're gonna have to. And the faster you let it go, the less anxiety you're gonna have about it.
Or is it that will not be worth tomorrow what it is today? In other words, your dollar is 30 cents tomorrow.
Deflation.
10 cents, if anything at all. It may be a worthless piece of paper.
Yeah, deflation means it goes down to zero. We're not at the bottom yet.
I think that for our listeners, and I want to say we don't mean to be bearers of gloom and doom, but I got to tell you, we're in a very, very gloomy time right now. I listened to that person on Capitol Hill yesterday, and I'm going to tell y'all folks, y'all better try to hear me. He wants you all gone. It ain't, that poem of Then They Came for You, that is exactly what you see happening now.
But Chief, we can't necessarily keep saying that person on Pennsylvania Avenue, because it's that same person on Pennsylvania Avenue for the last 500 years.
And so there, it kind of brings me into this. I have been a Democrat since I understood politics. But I was disappointed last night when I saw the Democratic politicians sitting in that chamber, because I believe all you all did was give him the audience that he needed so he could slap you in public. And that's in fact what he did. This is what troubles me about our Democrats. It's not business as usual. Gene, I think that you are absolutely right. The Democrats need to understand this system is crashing. But Democrats, what are you doing about it? How many times do you have to get slapped before you wake up? Al Green was he was right. He was like the Muse when he stood up and basically said, I'm not taking this shit off of you no more. But that's the message that Democrats have, because that's what people need to hear. It's that call, if you will. I understand why they don't want to do it. I understand it. But at some point, people who vote for you, they need to know that you will not just talk for them, but if necessarily, you will fight for them. And that's just not happening. It's not. We're taking blow after blow from this Republican administration. And I got to tell you the honest truth, I've heard very, very little from the Democrats, very little. And nobody wants to be looked at as being the one to incite. But come on now. They don't seem to have that same problem. They done took your jobs, they're taking your house, they're taking your health care, they're taking your education, they're taking the food off of your table. Democrats, when do you decide it is time to fight back?
If they can't fight back, it must be for a reason.
What is the reason, Gene?
They know that they know it's broken, but they don't want to tell you it's broken.
because they took part in. Listen, I
Yes,
guess I have to agree
yes,
with
they were
you.
complicit.
I have to agree with you because, and listen, I know people will want to throw bricks at me, and understand this. I think the world of Barack Obama, but I believe he should have fought to do more. We didn't get enough
He's
change
complicit.
of those years. We didn't, because he too, I believe, tried very hard to work within their system.
Realistically, though, Chief, can one black man as a president who got all these hundreds of thousands of white males around him have the ability to only support and help support the effort of black people? I
No,
doubt that's going to happen.
no. You see, and I think what I understood from Barack Obama, he did not want it to be a black or white issue. He wanted to be about those who understand what we needed to do, what was good. That's what he wanted.
Did you see
You have
change?
a coalition fight of good versus evil. Donald Trump is an evil person. He is. You can't call it any other way. Anytime you take food out of a baby's mouth, I don't see any other way of seeing you. Barack Obama tried to make it understood, as Dr. King did to something, as Malcolm realized. It's not a black issue. It's a issue of morality. When do we stand up and fight for morality? This is what I'm saying to the Democrats. I'm not saying to the Democrats, only fight for black people. I'm saying to them, you all need to fight and stand for what is right. That's what democracy is supposed to do. How did this person get here? Gene, going back, I go back as far as I can think. Why do we not come out and vote? People say, well, that's your own fault if you don't come out and vote. Well, I beg to differ. We were taught that our vote didn't matter. We were taught that it was a waste of time to vote. See, when white folks talk about, well, this is your fault, don't blame me for something that you instilled in us. But I blame us, but we didn't know then. We didn't. But we do know now.
Man, we still behind enemy lines, man.
Hey, Chief, as I listen to you talk about the Democratic Party, in my time, I would have to say that in actuality, both parties be failing their constituents, because
Yes.
when they go into those positions, they and those in their circles come out richer. And what they continue to do is give the constituents false representation and misleading them. So you're asking what they're gonna do. I honestly have to say it starts with us out here. We have to make a stance out here in order for those chumps in the Congress to make a stance for us. If we wait for them, we will be waiting.
You are history would say are 100% correct. I mean, even me, I don't want to have to admit that, but I know it's the truth. I know if it's going to be a change, that change is not going to come within. It's going to come without. It's going to have to be the people out here that say to those lawmakers, I don't give a damn whether you are Republican or Democrat, this is not working. Now, understand, this is not the first time this would have happened. The French Revolution, this is exactly what happened during the French Revolution, when those people who were being simply made poor, they did what you said is what they did. They said, we're going to bring down the entire structure of this government. And that's what they did. And I think this is what's going to happen again. I have no idea of what it's going to look like on the other side, but I think people are getting to a point where their position is it will have to be better than it is now.
Two things real quick. So this dude, Pastor Jamal Bryant, and I don't necessarily like him or care for his particular church antics. But so he got people down in Georgia and the surrounding counties doing a 40-day boycott of Target. But there's a Tesla dealership in Owens Mills. That's a part of Baltimore County. It's probably the next exit up from me. Tomorrow morning, when you get up and you ride past that Tesla dealership, them white people out there with signs, they don't have a problem seeing things through. They don't have a problem when they feel like they being offended, sticking they heads out or whatever. They making it happen. Wheelchairs, crutches, they up there. We don't do that.
Well, Nadir,
we want to sit back in our house and wait on somebody to save us, and it's not going to happen.
Well, Nadir, I'm going to say this to you, and I'm going to challenge your philosophy in just one way. Nadir, the reason I think it's going to happen, because of people like you. I think that what is needed, and I think that you have that trait, and I'm talking about the yous, the proverbial yous. Y'all ain't going to take this shit no more. Now, for my generation is baffling, but my generation is at a point where we have fought so many battles. Fighting a battle is not new to us. I will be there with you. Listen to the metaphor. We will be there with you. The problem I think that we have, and I think that the other side know it, too many of our young people don't understand what is going on right now. They don't see it as being their problem. As long as their Beamer is sitting out front, and it might not be after long, and you ain't got no job to pay for it, somebody's coming to get it. But until they get that wake-up call, Nadir, it's going to be a problem. But I want to say to you, Nadir, and I think this is important for my generation to relay this on. We know we have to be there with you. We know it. And we have to hope that we are secure enough where we are to take this on if it is necessary. And this goes back to Malcolm when Malcolm made it clear, by any means necessary. I think that it could very well start in a place like Prince George's County. I don't think that they're going to get away with taking from these people things that they have learned to enjoy. I think it's going to go quickly to DC. And I've got to tell you, places like DC, if that powder keg is lit there, it will spread like a wildfire. It will. The problem becomes, Gene, Nadir, you can be out there and you will be, but you've got to have some assurance that you ain't out there with those young people not understanding that they got to be a part of this fight also. You can't fight this for them. They have to fight it with you for everybody. That is our problem. But I think it's going to happen. I think in some cases, we talk about those returning citizens. I think there's a lot of anger. They have locked up so many Black people unlawfully. They have a reason to be angry. They do. You have a lot of Black people who were not able to get jobs, not those that are losing jobs, but those that have not been able to get a job simply because people wouldn't give them one. They're angry. I think, Nadir, in short, what I'm saying to your generation, we have got to find a way to get those people to listen to what you are saying. They have got to listen to, it's coming. Where do you want to be? To our audience, our producer is playing that music that tells me our time is up. While my co-hosts sometimes throw rocks at me for holding onto the mic, I want to say to all of you all, this is near and dear to me because I've seen it before. I'm a product of the 60s. I saw what happened and I understood the reason it needed to happen. I watched DC burn down. And while it was an awful thing to look at, we understood why it had to happen. I hope that all of you all find a Nadir somewhere, a Gene somewhere that you will listen to. You don't have to listen to us old heads, but listen to those who came before you and understand they can't fight this battle that's coming. They can't fight it by themselves. Until next week, this is Phil Lee from the County Barbershop. With me is my co-host,
Nadir Nasheed.
Gene LeGrand.
People, we'll see you all next week. We always want you to get in touch with us. We've got to do something. Let's show that we can be the Daniels of our community. Eugene, take us out, please.